There are certain mysteries in life. For example, isn't it mysterious why a cat always lands on all four paws? It's also mysterious why my neighbor always mows the lawn at 6 a.m. when I'm trying to sleep. But today, let's talk about some chess mysteries. That's right. We're going to look at mysterious moves, and we're going to play detective and try to figure out why they're made. When your opponent plays a move that you can't figure out at first, don't automatically assume it's bad. It might just be mysterious, and it's your turn to figure out why the move was made. In our first example, black was Timur Gariev. Why is that important? Well, he was in the middle of setting a world blindfold record. He played 48 games blindfold, and here's one of them. As black, he played bishop takes knight. Not so mysterious, because after pawn takes, he was just trying to make a passed pawn. But his next move was mysterious. Obviously, you can't push the pawn, and you might think it's time for the knight to help. But the most obvious knight move, like knight to a5, well, white can just play bishop to a2, and good luck breaking through that blockade. We already know about blockades. So Grandmaster Gariev played the mysterious knight to a7. Why would a knight go backward when it's your last remaining active piece? Well, let's play detective. In order for that pawn to get down the board, you've got to guard the a2 square. How are you going to guard a2? Well, you might want to get to the square c3 first. How do you get to c3? Well, you go backward to a7. Now, no matter what white does, let's just say his king moves in, the Grandmaster repositions the knight to b5, and we see the knight is coming to c3 next. In fact, white resigned because there was no way you can stop that pawn. You can't even really sacrifice your bishop for it. Let's take a look at another mysterious knight move. White was another Grandmaster. His name is Jan Elvist. No, not Elvis. Elvist. Elvist has not left the building. In this position, Elvist sang Love Me Tender while moving his knight to the square A1. Why would a knight go to the corner of the board? Well, we're already pretty good at being detectives right now. Can you figure out where the knight's going next? I bet you can. The only repositioning would be to go to the square C2. Why would you want to go to C2? Because you want to go to E3, and we've already learned about outposts. It was a strange way to get to the outpost, but strange still counts. Now, when your opponent plays the mysterious move, if you play detective correctly and you figure out why he or she did it, that might give you a good response. If you know this knight is going to post up on d5, you're going to want to get rid of it when it gets there. So one good response would be to play the somewhat mysterious response, knight to a6. Yeah, you're going to the edge of the board, but the purpose is your knight can now go back to c7. We are aiming at the outpost, and even when white's knight gets there, well, we can at least trade it off the chessboard. Let's take a look at some mysterious moves not involving the knight. This next one's a very famous game in chess history. It's Karpov Kasparov from their 1985 World Championship. Karpov was white. He had to win to retain the title. And in this position, Garry Kasparov, who played black, played the incredibly mysterious rook to e7. And after this move, Karpov realized what the reason was. Okay, it took him a long time. But basically, white's been wanting to play the move f5. But if white plays f5 now, black is actually going to trade twice. And notice the positioning of the black rook. It already guards the f7 pawn, which means this queen is not making a fork. Yes, she's threatening to take on h7, but that's the only threat she's making. So Kasparov could have played the very calm knight to f8, and even though black's pawns are shattered, there's no obvious way for white to break through. So very mysterious. Now there's actually a second reason that that rook came up to the square e7. If we go back, black has this idea of playing the move f5 someday. In fact, Kasparov played it later in the game. Notice after f5, white could take en passant. But after white takes en passant, if black takes back with the bishop, the rook will suddenly defend the h7 pawn. Let's take a look at that. After king to g1, this is not the actual move of the game, but let's just say Kasparov played f5, and this pawn took, and the bishop took. Now there's more defense over the h7 pawn in case white ever makes a double attack. Let's take a look at another mysterious rook move that happened very recently. I really like this next one. If I were to ask you, what's the best place for the black rooks, what would you say? You'd probably choose to double up on the d-file, wouldn't you? But actually, white's just going to trade a bunch of rooks. So watch what the Grandmaster playing black did. He played the very mysterious rook to g8. What is the purpose of the rook going behind his own bishop and his own pawn? Well, all was revealed after white's next move. White played a5, but then f5. bang! The G file is getting ripped open. This pawn's being double attacked, so white felt the need to capture, but watch this. After takes back, can you figure out why the rook's there now? Yeah, the rook is eyeing the G2 pawn, and oh, by the way, black has a light squared bishop and white doesn't, which means the light squares are weak. Let me just fast forward very quickly the next couple of moves and watch how black's attack broke through. So we had rook to D1, rook to A8, no trade here, F4, and the pieces keep on coming. Bishop to F6, the file is now open, the pawn is pinned, the knight is in danger, and although the knight runs away, black just doubles rooks, no big deal. And after the doubling of rooks, there is no holding together white's position. Black broke through, and that poor white king couldn't survive. Got one final mysterious move. Let's take a look at how mysterious pawns can be. This final position has top Grandmaster Wesley, so is white, and Garry Kasparov makes his second appearance. He's black, and with a whole bunch of stuff going on in the middle of the board, Kasparov plays the very mysterious H6. Break out your magnifying glass to figure out why he played this one. Nobody in the audience could figure out why, but it turned out there was really good reason. Kasparov wanted to play the move B5 to kick that strong knight out of there, but he found the amazing tactic knight takes, pawn takes, knight to G5, and surprise, surprise, there is no way to prevent the queen from invading or from the knight making a fork. There are too many weak light squares. So if we go back to this position, we now understand Kasparov's moves better. By playing H6, he's actually preparing the move B5 and not allowing that sacrifice because this knight can no longer go to the G5 square. Now Wesley So, armed with that information, he's a pretty good detective, found out a brilliant way to win by actually sacrificing the knight. The point of our lesson today is that if you can play detective and get inside the mind of your opponent, you can get ready for what's coming, you can react, and you will never be surprised at a chess game.